at any rate, once you've removed the strings, you're not going to have, the neck isn't going to be in the same position as it will be once it is strung up. So what I like to do is I like to adjust the truss rod to kind of mimic string tension. So what I'll do is I'll use a straight edge that it's kind of a funky straight edge that I made myself. I went to one of those big box hardware stores and I bought a length of aluminum straight edge. It's got, you know, a scale on one side and it's nothing on the other side. And what I did was I notched it. And what these notches do is they sit over the frets. So the actual straight edge portion of the ruler is sitting directly on the fretboard. And that lets me see what the fretboard's doing in terms of being level. Now some people will take a straight edge and lay it on top of the frets, but you can't really do that because you haven't leveled the frets yet, so you wouldn't be getting an accurate reading. So I like to take the reading directly off the fretboard. And as you can see, by wiggling the center of it, I have just a little bit of back bow in here that I induced with the truss rod. Later on, when I string up the guitar, I'll probably take some of that out because the strings will automatically pull it. Now at this stage, with a little bit of back bow in, we're ready to level the frets. And I follow a fairly traditional method. What I like to do is go over the top of each fret wire with a highlighter marker. Doesn't matter what color. It can be pink, it could be yellow, orange, whatever. Just put a stripe along each one of those frets. Then what I'll do is I'll take my radius sanding block. This is a 12-inch radius block that I purchased from StewMac. And I'll put some 400 grit wet dry paper on here. Now, I don't put it on wet, I leave it dry. But I'll put that on here, and then I set the block down on top of the frets, and I pinch it so that my thumb and finger are centering the block right over the middle of the fretboard. And then I just begin sanding back and forth. It doesn't take long because, you know, as you know, fret wire isn't that incredibly resilient unless you're using stainless steel wire. Then it takes a little bit more elbow grease. But it will sand down pretty quickly, and what will happen is you'll begin to remove that highlighter from the tops of the highest frets. Once you get all that highlighter removed from all the frets, the minute the last fret is sanded off, then you can stop. You're done with the leveling portion of it. However, you'll notice if you look closely, the fret wires will be flat along the top. Some people like that, and that's fine with them. I prefer to have the frets to be nice and rounded. So the next step is I take one of these files, and I don't know if you can see that, but there's a groove that runs the length of the file that has serrations in it. And those will dig out some of the top of the frets, those sharp edges, and it works very quickly. And you'll end up recurving the top of that fret, and that's called crowning. Once I get the crown put back into place, at this stage, the frets are pretty worn down or pretty roughed up as far as tool marks and from the sandpaper. So what I have to do now is I have to go over each individual fret and sand out those tool marks and get the fret nice and smooth. The way I do it is I'll start with 400 grit wet dry paper, and I just cut a small square of it. And then to protect the fretboard, because I don't want to damage it, you can either mask it off with masking tape, or I took a piece of brass, just thin cardboard thickness brass. There's some scrap that I had, and I cut a slot into it that's a little bit wider and a little bit longer than the longest fret on my guitar. And it actually serves as a masking method, if you will, so that I can place the brass over the the fret, and then I can take my sandpaper and begin sanding it. Now the way I do it is I have to be careful not to sand back another flat spot into the fret wire, and thus have to go back and recrown. So what I do is I take my 400 grit paper and I'll soak it in some water, not to get it dripping wet, but just moist enough that it becomes somewhat pliable. And then I'll lay the paper directly over the fret, and then I'll pinch my pointing finger and my middle finger right over that fret, and I'll just begin sanding back and forth. And it doesn't take long. Again, you're gonna be looking to remove those tool marks while maintaining the shape of the fret wire. Once I've done it with the 600 or the 400 grit paper, I'll switch to 600 grit, and then I might go as far as 1000 grit. It just depends.